Anyone who actually studies the film can see immediately that these two quarterbacks don't play the same game. But one reporter clearly skipped the film session and made a judgment based on appearance instead of performance. Earlier today, Shedeur Sanders called out that kind of thinking after being hit with one of the weakest comparisons in football media. Online reaction was instant, with many calling the question inappropriate, and even former NFL quarterback Robert Griffin III publicly backed Shedeur's response. RG3
fewer pass attempts in his NFL career than Shedeur Sanders. Has fewer starts than Shedeur Sanders.
Was drafted higher, though.
Was drafted higher.
But he was drafted high, but he was drafted at 86 overall. He was drafted in the dead zone, where starters do not develop. Right. They do not come from there.
When Malik Willis, a little bit he played at Tennessee,
it was a nightmare.
Yeah, why is he a hot commodity based on what?
To really grasp how exaggerated this debate has become, we need to rewind and start with the facts. Media conversations often revolve around potential because it's abstract. It can be shaped into any narrative. But production is concrete. Numbers don't shift based on opinion. So let's compare their final college seasons. Malik Willis played at Liberty, and respect to that program, but the level of weekly competition matters. Facing teams like North Texas and Eastern Michigan, he put up roughly 2,800 passing yards and 27 touchdowns while completing about 60% of his throws. In high-level scouting discussions, a 60% completion rate against mid-level defenses raises serious questions about precision and projection. Now shift to Shedeur Sanders. Competing in the Big 12 against NFL-style defensive schemes every week, he didn't just participate, he excelled. Over 4,100 passing yards, 37 touchdowns. A completely different level of output against far stronger opposition.
Because he can start the season and go. Yeah. And you're done. If you take Malik Willis, you're done with the Shedeur Sanders experiment. You can't keep him around.
No. Right. Yes.
So,
because you're saying, well, we like this other mid-round pick better. Because you're going to pay him decent money.
I mean, we just asked the question about where would Shedeur been drafted had he not been a Sanders.
Right.
Well, we said about where Malik Willis was. Right. So then all of a sudden, you to your point, you'd be bringing Malik in saying, okay.
Right. You're saying you believe in him more.
You believe in this guy who's about the same skill set as you.
And that 74% completion rate is the detail that really separates everything. Pause for a moment and process the difference. We're talking about roughly 1,300 additional passing yards and 10 more touchdowns, all while facing far more advanced defensive schemes. That's not a minor statistical advantage. That's an entirely different tier of performance. Suggesting that Willis has outperformed Shedeur requires ignoring years of box scores and measurable evidence. But fine, let's remove college from the conversation altogether and shift to the professional level. Malik Willis has now spent multiple seasons in the NFL, including time in Tennessee and Green Bay. He's worked within different systems, had access to experienced coaching, and benefited from developmental time on the bench. In his limited starts, however, the production has been concerning. There have been several games where he failed to reach even 100 passing yards, along with multiple starts without a single touchdown pass. In today's NFL, a league structured to encourage quarterback success, going that many starts without reaching the end zone raises serious long-term questions.
Listen, the Malik Willis is extremely high risk. He absolutely is. I think that we're going to see his market get inflated, in particular this offseason, because the quarterback class is so bad, right? After Fernando Mendoza, the draft is really not an exciting spot. The best options on the trade market are Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa in terms of pure talent, but neither one is a good option because they're both coming off of their massive extensions and the teams are really trying to sell them for parts, right? So Willis, when we go and we try to find historical precedent.
Now compare that to Shedeur's situation. He entered the league as a fifth-round selection and wasn't handed anything. In fact, there were stretches where he felt like an afterthought within his own organization. Coaching instability, front office distractions, and constant changes in play calling created an environment that would challenge any young quarterback. Despite that, he consistently delivered, including multiple 300-yard performances that looked routine rather than accidental. He also produced touchdowns against quality, winning teams, something several top 10 draft picks haven't matched. When you watch the film, the contrast becomes obvious. One quarterback processes coverage rotations calmly and works through progressions with confidence. The other has struggled when the primary option is removed. So if the statistical and film differences are this clear, why does the debate continue? That's where the conversation shifts. Some league observers believe the constant comparisons aren't accidental. Certain coaching philosophies tend to favor quarterbacks who operate quietly within strict system boundaries and avoid drawing attention. Shedeur, however, commands attention. He carries visibility, expectation, and a brand that naturally increases scrutiny. That spotlight can create discomfort in traditional structures. By repeatedly introducing alternative names, whether it's Malik Willis or another quarterback, the discussion begins to artificially manufacture competition. And when that happens, perception starts influencing value. If a player can't be challenged cleanly on performance, the narrative around him becomes the battleground instead.
The Browns invested the stretch run, albeit it was off the cliff, into Shedeur Sanders this year. They also took Dylan Gabriel last year. Why wouldn't the Browns be better off just sticking with Shedeur, who's going to cost a lot less money, and seeing whether or not he can do this thing here? They've already talked about how they anticipate being one of, if not the youngest team this year, rather than going out spending $20 million plus for a guy who has as much experience.
The concern is that by constantly framing Shedeur as risky, the narrative prepares fans to accept a safer, more controllable veteran option, someone who fits neatly into a system and doesn't challenge the structure. But when you examine the financial side of this discussion, the logic starts to fall apart. Reports suggest that Malik Willis could attract somewhere between $15 and $20 million on the open market, largely because of a thinner quarterback draft class. If Cleveland were to commit that level of money, it would raise serious questions about roster management. Why invest $20 million annually in a quarterback who has yet to prove himself as a consistent starter, especially when you already have a highly productive young player on a fifth-round rookie deal? From a salary cap standpoint, Shedeur's contract provides enormous flexibility over the next few seasons. That kind of financial advantage should be used to strengthen the offensive line or add explosive playmakers, not to overpay at a position where you may already have long-term value.
Threw 2,800 yards and 27 touchdowns while completing 60% of his passes. He was playing against North Texas and Eastern Michigan. As a senior in Big 12, Shedeur Sanders threw for 4,100 yards and 37 touchdowns while completing 74% of his damn passes. What are we talking about here? He's better than Shedeur. Oh, and as a rookie third-round draft pick in the NFL, Malik Willis had 3 starts. Here are the stats.
Committing that kind of money to Willis would send a clear message that the organization is willing to sacrifice long-term upside for short-term comfort. It would feel like choosing financial strain and average results over building around a young quarterback who has already shown high-level potential. For fans who invest their time, money, and loyalty into the team, that decision wouldn't sit well. What makes the conversation even more confusing is how quickly the media narrative keeps shifting. Not long ago, many voices were promoting Fernando Mendoza as the future solution, describing him as the missing piece that could transform the franchise. But as soon as that storyline lost momentum, the tone changed completely. Now the same outlets question whether he's even capable of leading a team long-term. That constant pivoting makes it difficult to separate serious analysis from trend-driven speculation.
2,800 yards and 27 touchdowns while completing 60% of his passes. He was playing against North Texas and Eastern Michigan. As a senior in Big 12, Shedeur Sanders threw for 4,100 yards and 37 touchdowns while completing 74% of his damn passes. What are we talking about here? He's better than Shedeur. Oh, and as a rookie third-round draft pick in the NFL, Malik Willis had 3 starts. Here are the stats from those games.
One moment a quarterback is being sold as the answer, and the next moment Malik Willis is suddenly presented as the solution. It starts to feel like there's a rotating list in the media room, a new name pulled out every week just to shift attention away from Shedeur. One week it's talk of trading for Kyler Murray, despite his massive contract that would severely limit the team financially. The next week it's excitement around a draft prospect who hasn't taken a single snap at the professional level. The constant searching reveals desperation for an alternative, because the Sanders era represents a change in influence that some people aren't comfortable with. They don't want a quarterback who commands the room or carries weight beyond the locker room. They want someone easier to question, easier to control, and easier to challenge publicly. But what if the Browns stopped entertaining the noise altogether? Imagine giving an offensive mind who understands how to maximize a mobile, intelligent quarterback full authority to build around Shedeur. No artificial competitions. No weekly distractions. No pressure created by the next trending name. If Shedeur were given a complete off-season running with the first unit, developing chemistry, and preparing as the unquestioned starter, the conversation around this team would look completely different.
11 damn football games. Me personally, I'm going to say they're going to go undefeated if Shedeur the quarterback. I don't give a damn what none of y'all say in the comment section. I ride with Shedeur, bruh, and you should feel the same way too if you're a Shedeur Sanders fan. I'm talking undefeated. They going to beat everybody, dog. I just got to keep it real. Now, there has been a notion that Cleveland Brown reporters has been pushing in regards to this whole situation involving Malik Willis. So if you guys don't know, Malik Willis, the backup quarterback.
Now imagine Shedeur operating in an offense that's designed to maximize his strengths instead of holding him back. A system where the coordinator isn't trying to box him in, but instead gives him freedom to attack. When that happens, the ceiling for this roster changes completely. We're talking about a quarterback who completed 74% of his passes in college. That level of accuracy doesn't just vanish. In a properly structured offense, Shedeur isn't merely a Pro Bowl caliber player. He enters the MVP conversation. Right now, the team has elite talent sitting in the garage, yet the media keeps pushing the idea that it should be swapped out for a clearly inferior option. At some point, fans have to stop trusting analysts who've been wrong about Cleveland quarterbacks for decades. The truth is straightforward: narratives shift, opinions change, but production remains constant. This discussion around Malik Willis isn't rooted in football logic, it's driven by motive. It's an effort to slow down a rising star before he fully takes control. But reality has a way of surfacing eventually. Shedeur has already shown he can withstand criticism, internal pressure, and public doubt. He's delivered better numbers, stronger performances, and more consistent results than every alternative that's been mentioned. If the organization is thinking clearly, it will end the speculation, commit fully, and build around the quarterback who has actually earned the job on the field. Because letting him walk, or continuously undermining him, wouldn't just mean losing a player. It would mean throwing away the clearest path this franchise has had toward long-term success in years. The decision now sits with the fans as much as anyone else. Will they allow media narratives to steer the future, or will they support the quarterback who has already proven himself? Drop your opinion below. Are you backing Shedeur, or buying into the $20 million Willis storyline? Stay connected, because as more film gets examined, the full picture keeps coming into focus. And when you dive into the tape the media rarely highlights, the contrast becomes even sharper. In those games where Willis failed to generate touchdowns, hesitation was a recurring issue. Holding the ball for nearly 4 seconds in the NFL is an invitation for pressure, and the sacks that followed weren't always on the offensive line, they came from slow processing. Compare that with Shedeur's early NFL flashes. Even as pockets collapsed, his internal timing stayed sharp. The ball came out quickly, checkdowns were used efficiently, and drives stayed alive. Supporters argue Willis simply needs the right system, but after multiple schemes and coaching staffs, the results haven't changed. Athletic ability alone doesn't make a leader under center. When you place that next to a quarterback raised around elite football intelligence, mentored by one of the game's greatest minds, the difference in command becomes obvious. We've seen this pattern before: talented, confident quarterbacks being pushed aside in favor of more manageable options. History already showed how that played out with Robert Griffin III.